wanted to do a remake of a video I initially filmed about 3 or 4 years ago where I talked about the Saab 9.3 versus the Saab 9.5, kind of compared them on a few different levels, and ultimately gave my opinion on which was better. So I want to revisit that now that it has been quite a while and I have learned much more about these cars, and now I've owned a 9.5. We have 2 9.5s in the family, we have 3 9.3s in the family, so I have a pretty good understanding of both cars, and this is just my opinion. You're certainly entitled to your own opinion, so if you disagree with me, feel free to explain why in the comments or why you agree with me. But I do want to do this in sort of a unique way. So if you watch YouTube a lot, which maybe you do because you're watching this video right now, you might be familiar with a channel by the name of Doug DeMuro. He is one of the most popular car review channels out there. I watched just about every one of his videos. He's great, although his only review he's done on the Saab was not the kindest review. But that's beside the point. But at the end of every video, every car that he does, he gives each car what he calls a Doug score, where he rates the car on 10 different categories. Each category is scaling from 1 to 10, and that total number is the overall Doug score, and then he has them all listed on a chart. So I'm going to kind of do my own version of that when comparing the 9.3 and the 9.5. I'm going to be using the same 10 categories that he uses, and instead of giving them a 1 to 10 scale, I'm going to say they're either equal in this category, or the 9.3 is better, or the 9.5 is better, and at the end we're going to add them up and see which one has more points, or one more categories. So one last thing here, I don't want to also just compare a random 9.3 versus a 9.5. For instance, it would not be fair to compare a Turbo X to a base model 9.5. So what I'm going to be doing is kind of taking the most desirable of the bunch, and the most desirable that's not like a limited edition such as a Griffin or a Turbo X. So for example, for the 9.5 we're going to be using the 2004 to 2005 9.5 Aero. Those are often thought to be the best years of the 9.5, and the Aero variant of course being the most desirable. Now when it comes to the 9.3, I was going to use a newer 9.3 like a 2008 V6 Aero, but I think it would be fair to use a 2006 V6 Aero only because it's the closest in model year, and it also is the first year of the V6 engine, which is really, when I think of a 9.3 Aero, I think of one with the 2.8 V6. So we're going to be comparing the 04 to 05 9.5 Aero versus the 06 9.3 Aero, because once you get in the newer 9.3s, the interior changes, it gets more modern, and I don't think that's fair to compare against an older model 9.5. And we actually have an 06 9.3 Aero and an 04 9.5 Aero, and I wish I had them both here to film, but unfortunately neither of them are my cars, but it is what it is. I think that's enough of an intro. Let's go ahead and get into this video. So the Doug score is really divided into 2 different categories. He has the weekend category and he has the daily category. Each one has 5 different sections that are rated from 1 to 10, and again, I'm just going to pick which one is better. We're going to start with the weekend category. The first category that is judged is styling. So styling is always subjective, which if I had to pick, I would say that the 9.3 Aero looks better. So we can chalk that one up for the 9.3. I know a lot of people would say the 9.5 Aero looks better. So for this category, I think I'm going to give them a tie, because personally I think both of them look good, but if I had to choose one, I'd pick the 9.3 Aero. So we're going to go with a tie for this first one. I'm trying not to put ties for many of them. I think the 9.3 Aero looks better just because I kind of like the overall, it just looks like a sportier car to me. It kind of has a little bit more of an aggressive look. I think the 9.5 Aero has its subtle aggressive looks too, but with the 9.3 Aero, the Aero body kit, the little Aero spoiler on the back, I think overall it's just very subtly aggressive, and I've always really liked that about the 9.3 Aero. And the shark tooth front bumper on the 9.5 Aero is really the best part about it, but I don't think I can say that the rest of the exterior is necessarily as like subtly aggressive or as good looking as the 9.3 Aero is. The second category is acceleration. So I don't want to just rate this based on acceleration solely. I kind of want to group this into performance as a whole. Now some of you might debate me on this, but I'm going to look at it as both stock performance and performance potential. So when you look at the 2.8 V6 that came in a 9.3 Aero, if we want to just strictly look at acceleration, about 6 seconds, 0 to 60, maybe a little bit more, give or take. Stock about 250 horsepower, 258 or 55 foot-pounds of torque. Then looking at the 9.5, 0 to 60 is a little bit more. I think it's around 6 to 6.5 seconds, so it's just a hair slower. It makes about the same power and torque. I think it makes 260 horsepower, actually, so a little bit more power, and I believe just about the same torque. So initially you'd say, well, it's basically a toss-up and a tie, but this is where I want to differentiate these two cars, because if you're looking at either of these and you say, I want to modify these and make them fast, this is where your choice, in my opinion, should fall with the 9.3 Aero. And that is because the 2.8 V6 and the 9.3 Aero is a much better motor to handle power. So you can make plenty of power on a B235, which is the motor that comes in the 9.5 Aero. But once you hit about 300, a little bit more than 300 horsepower, you got to start tearing in the motor and upgrading some of the internals of it so you can make more power. With the 2.8 V6, there are people out there making 500-600 wheel horsepower on the stock block without any issues. So you can do a lot of crap to these 2.8 V6s without having to really tear into the motor itself. So for that reason, acceleration, performance, whatever you want to call this category, I'm giving to the 9.3 Aero, making the total score 9.32, 9.51. Next is handling. So when we're looking at handling, we're talking about it from a performance perspective. How well can the car take a turn? This one I'm going to have to give to the 9.3 Aero as well, mainly because the 9.3 is a little bit of a smaller car. The Aero, well, both the 9.5 and the 9.3 Aero both come with sportier suspensions than the base models. But the 9.3 also has what's called Reaxis. If you haven't heard of that, make sure to check out the video in the top corner here. But basically what it is a passive rear wheel steering, and it really helps in high-speed cornering. It only came on front-wheel drive 9.3s, so oddly enough, my Turbo X does not have it, but my 03 9.3 does have it. So it's a cool little feature that really helps with high-speed cornering and just stability overall. And that and the fact with the chassis for the 9.3 is just a better handling chassis than the 9.5. Not to say the 9.5 is a bad handling car, because it's not, but the 9.3 is just better. So that brings the score to 9.3 Aero 3, 9.5 Aero 1. The fourth category under the weekend score is cool factor. I don't really have much to say on this one, so I'm just going to give them both a tie just for the sake of not making this video 30 minutes long. I think they're both equally kind of quirky and cool. That makes the score for this 9.3 Aero 4, 9.5 Aero 2. So the last category in the weekend score is fun factor. How fun is the car to drive? How engaging is it? Now, both of these cars can come with a manual transmission. Both of them also come with an automatic. Now, again, this one, to me at least, kind of ties back into handling. How fun is this car to take on a mountain road? How fun is it to go through the gears and just, you know, enjoy it as a driver's car? And this, I'm sure some people are going to debate me on this, but I'm going to say 9.3 Aero on this one as well. Part of the fact that it's just, like I said earlier, kind of a sportier chassis, a better handling car, and you know, I think the V6 exhaust note also sounds better than the B235 exhaust note. That brings the weekend category to 9.3 Aero 5 and 9.5 Aero 2. So you're thinking, wow, this is a blowout. But next we come to the daily categories, and this is where the 9.5 really shines over the 9.3 in my opinion, the 9.5 being a bigger car, more luxurious, and stuff like that. So the daily category has 5 more different ratings that we're going to look at. The first one being features. So when we look at features, they're both obviously 15, almost 20-year-old cars at this point. So if you look at it from modern standards, they don't really have much. But I am going to give a slight nod to the 9.3 Aero on this one, mainly because I thought about this one for a while and I realized, I mean, the 9.5 Aero doesn't even, the 04 to 05 9.5s don't even come with an aux cord. Whereas in the NG93s, if it didn't come with an aux cord, you could very easily add one, like a factory option one, and just kind of that alone. And when it comes to all the quirks and things like that, they're relatively even. The 9.5 might have some small little things here and there that the 9.3 doesn't. But I think overall, I have to give a slight nod to the 9.3 Aero here, just because it has a little bit more tech in it than a 9.5 would. So that makes the score 9.3 Aero 6, 9.5 Aero 2. Next up is comfort, and this one is very easy. That is 9.5 Aero. The 9.5 is just a bigger car. The seats themselves are much more comfortable. I mean, I love driving my dad's 9.5 Aero. It's just such a comfortable car, a great highway cruiser. The 9.3 is not an uncomfortable car, but the 9.5 is just a lot better at being a luxurious, kind of comfortable drive. So that makes the score 9.3 Aero 6, 9.5 Aero 3. Next up is quality. So this is talking about reliability, which in my opinion is a draw. Both cars are going to have their common problems, but I think it's all kind of a wash. So in terms of reliability, I think it's a draw. But we also want to look at actual quality of the car. How well built is it? And this one obviously is going to go to the 9.5 Aero as well. Just everyone knows if you've driven an MG93, there's a lot of cheap plastics on the inside. You'll pull on the door handle and it'll squeak, or it just doesn't feel super well built. We can thank GM for that, of course. So for that reason, I'm going to give the 9.5 Aero the edge in the quality score, making the overall score 9.3 Aero 6, 9.5 Aero 4. Next up, we have practicality. And this one pretty straightforward as well. Which car is more practical? Which car is bigger? Which car can you fit more cargo in? And that one goes to the 9.5 Aero as well. The 9.5 is just a bigger car, you can store more stuff in it, and it's slightly more practical. And that makes the score 9.3 Aero 6, 9.5 Aero 5. So just like that, the 9.5 is clearly done better in the daily category. Lastly is value. And this one is just kind of hard to judge as well because Saabs are all very cheap cars. The 9.3 Aero doesn't usually cost a substantial amount more than a 9.5 Aero, or vice versa. They're relatively priced about the same and you get a lot for your money. So that one to me is a wash. Someone might say that a 9.3 Aero or a 9.5 Aero is better value, but to me, I think they provide about the same value. So I'm going to give each of them a point in that. So that brings the overall score, ties included, to 9.3 Aero 7, 9.5 Aero 6. So the 9.3 Aero, in my opinion, slightly edges out the 9.5. But when you break it down and look at it, the 9.3 Aero is a much better weekend car, whereas the 9.5 Aero is a much better daily car. For example, when looking at the weekend categories, the 9.3 Aero won 5 points to 2 points, but when looking at the daily categories, the 9.5 Aero won 4 points to 2 points. Hopefully this video has provided some sort of clarification or insight for people who might be considering one over the other. And I always tell people when they ask me which Saab should I get, I always tell them it depends on what you want. Do you just want a car that's going to be a nice, comfortable daily driver? You should probably look at something more like a 9.5. If it's something that you have big plans to modify, you want to make huge power, things like that, you might want to look towards a 9.3. Now, there are plenty of 9.5s that are very well built, very high power cars, and they can be built to high power. I'm not saying that they can't, but I do think the 9.3 is, at least if you're just looking at doing full bolt-ons, you want to get max power potential, it's better in that sense. But on the flip side, the 9.5 is the bigger car, it's more luxurious, more comfortable, so there's going to be trade-offs either way, and that's what I tried to show in this video. So hopefully this provided some insight to some of you, or maybe you just enjoyed me going through here and talking about the two models. So if you did enjoy this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments, maybe even a score, 9.3 versus 9.5, what you would give them. And yeah, that's all I got for today. See you all next time.